All right, Georgia Tech's on the board as we look for the NFL draft coming up on Thursday, and we knock out college by college, trying to look at the NFL prospects and those guys that are definitely going to get drafted and those guys that are kind of sweating it out and then possibly looking for an NFL camp to join this fall. So anyway, we've got Joey Weaver from the Rumble seat on the Yellow Jacket platform on SB Nation, of course, our Georgia Tech contact. Of course, as always, Joey, we appreciate the time, and we're going to set you up with Shaq Mason. And I was just looking at this guy's accolades, Joey. Outside of skill position players that gain most of the attention in the awards, I don't know how you gain many more accolades than first-team All-American, first-team All-ACC, All-Bowl team, three-time ACC Offensive Lineman of the Week, and then if you go back to 2013, All-ACC first team. So he's about as good as it gets at the collegiate level. Can you summarize his career and kind of how he projects to the next level for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Mason, for a few years now, has been really the anchor of Georgia Tech's offensive line. I think he learned a lot from Amorgi Uzi, who graduated a couple years ago, very talented guard. Mason was really good at the college level, very talented, is very athletic, very mobile, does a lot of really good things in the offensive line. I think there's a real question about how he's going to translate to the NFL. He's pretty undersized at about 6'1" and arms under 32 inches long. He's going to have some trouble maybe with leverage, some of the bigger guys. But so he's gotten a lot of looks. He played a lot of guard in college. He was the right guard for Georgia Tech, but he's gotten a lot of looks to play center. I know that the New England Patriots were looking at him pretty heavily at center for his pro day, and so that's where I'd imagine that he'll land. I think that he'll get drafted at some point late in the draft, maybe 6th, 7th round, and he'll have a chance to prove himself from there. But it's going to be interesting to see how his size does affect him, because there's not a whole lot of offensive linemen in the NFL that have good careers that are of his size.
So, Joey, for a team that runs more than just about anybody in the country, this may not make a whole lot of sense that you've got 3 surefire NFL draft prospects and 2 of them are at wide receiver. But if you look at the big picture, a couple things play in here. Of course, most of the defense is coming back from a really good defense in 2014. And also, when Georgia Tech does throw it, they throw it for big plays and big chunk yardage, and they do go out and get very, very athletic, talented wide receivers. So we've got DeAndre Smelter, a guy that we've grown accustomed to in the last few years, caught 35 passes despite missing the 2 most important games of the season last year at the end against Florida State and in the Orange Bowl against Mississippi State. Over 20 yards per reception, coming off a season in which he caught 21 the season before. So can you size up Smelter for us and how he projects?
Yeah, Smelter's a really interesting case. He had originally, I believe, signed on to play coming out of high school as a wide receiver, spent his first 2 years of college on the baseball team as a pitcher. So a very versatile, athletic guy. His shoulder, I think, kind of gave out on him, and he ended up trying to go back to play football, and thank God he did, because he had some really great moments for Georgia Tech. A very athletic guy, really good hands, very physical, good blocker in the running game. His hands, I believe, are like 11 inches across, which is like about the size of a frying pan. So it's he really brings a whole lot to the table. Yeah, brings a whole lot to the table, and I think that honestly, I could have seen him creeping up even into the 2nd round. Before that ACL tear. Now it's kind of a question for NFL teams is, do they want to take the injury risk? If it's me, from what I've watched him over the last couple of years, I would absolutely take that risk, because he is a very, very talented receiver that very much is in the next one in line behind Calvin Johnson or Demarius Thomas as big-time receivers to come out of Georgia Tech.
Joey, you just said 11 inches. From where to where?
I think from the tip of the thumb maybe to the tip of the pinky, it's almost a foot long.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, ridiculous.
That's about 6 or 7 inches, I guess.
I think he could wrap his head fully around a baseball and then some.
Wow, that's good stuff. Okay, so we got another wide receiver to talk about. Not nearly as productive as Smelter, but still starting wide receiver in Darren Waller. And again, we see the trend here. Only 26 catches last year, 17 the year before. But Georgia Tech wide receivers, the good ones, the really good ones, yards per catch and scoring out of the catches. So only 26 catches, but 6 touchdowns. once every 4 catches and 17 yards per catch, 21.6 the year before. So what do you have for us on Waller?
Yeah, Waller is definitely another cool case. He's a big boy. I think he measured in at the combine at 6'6" and like 245 pounds. A lot of people wanted to look at him as like a tight end type, maybe. I think if he was going to be a tight end type, he might have to be more of like a Jimmy Graham style that didn't do a whole lot of blocking, because I have major questions about his physicality, but he did benefit heavily from having a whole lot of one-on-one coverage. There's not a whole lot of cornerbacks out there that are going to be able to take a guy of his size by themselves. So a very athletic guy, and even at his size, he ran a 40-yard dash under 4.5 seconds. So very, very fast, very athletic. He's a bit of a project. Hands were a question at times in college, and I think he started to work it out towards the end, but still, I think there's still a couple of questions to be asked about that. Definitely a lot of potential, though. Again, you can't teach size, can't teach athleticism. He jumps extremely well. I think he was on the punt block team early in college and blocked a few punts, just being really tall, really long arms. Definitely worth somebody taking a look at. I think that he might be more like a 5th, 6th round pick, kind of middle to the middle back ends of the draft. Going to be interesting to see what he does in the NFL. The last project that Georgia Tech kind of produced at that position was Stephen Hill. Came out a couple years ago and was just a freak at the combine. I think he ran like a sub 4.4 at 6'5" and 220 pounds or something. He's been a bit of a disappointment, but I think that I had much bigger questions about his hands when he came out than I do about Waller's. I feel better about Waller than I did about Hill, so it's going to be interesting to see how they compare over the first few years of their career.
And Stephen Hill went to the Jets, right?
Went to the Jets, and I believe now is at Carolina with the Panthers.
So, of course, not a whole lot of quarterback talent with the Jets to help him out as well. So that's a disclaimer. Joey, we'll group the rest of these guys together. And what strikes me as interesting is you got 2 running backs, of course, in Sinjin Days and Zach Lasky. We know how much the running back position is utilized on the ground at Georgia Tech, but you usually have 2 or 3 guys in the mix, plus the quarterback sometimes carries it more than anybody. So you're not necessarily going to wear the running back down, but the difficult transition is, of course, in style of offense going from the collegiate game at Georgia Tech with the triple option going to the NFL. Then you got a safety in Isaiah Johnson, also a linebacker in Quayshawn Neely. If you can give us a look at these guys who may or may not get drafted, but regardless, if you follow the NFL, they're going to be in a camp somewhere.
Yeah, I think of those 4 that you mentioned, Johnson, the safety, is probably the best prospect of the 4 of them. He has a chance to maybe creep into the 7th round, get drafted by somebody. Big guy, hits well, very instinctive, a good prospect all around, looks the part to play a safety in the NFL. I think somebody's going to give him a look. The 2 running backs are an interesting case. Days is much bigger, more of almost like a fullback type. Kind of a shame where we are in the NFL now that fullbacks aren't used as much. It might hurt his chances of getting on the field somewhere. Lasky, on the other hand, has really impressed a lot of teams with workout numbers. Running pretty good 40-yard dash, I believe, under 4.6, and doing that at 6'2", 225. So he's really opened some eyes. He's got a lot of versatility. He can do some stuff in the passing game, and has some blocking experience coming obviously out of the triple option offense. So there's some potential there. I would imagine both Days and Lasky get camp invites. I don't see them getting drafted, but there's definitely a chance maybe in the 7th round or something as the draft pulls to a close. But the other one you mentioned was Quayshawn Neely. He's a linebacker, did really well at the East-West Shrine game, has pretty average numbers, was pretty middle of the pack as compared to some of the guys at the NFL Combine. He was not invited, but getting some looks. I think even the Eagles were looking at him at Pro Day as a possible defensive back. He's always been a very mobile, athletic guy, could possibly translate as a safety or something like that. He is a little bit undersized at only about 6'1", and I think that might be his biggest detriment in the NFL. But again, as with Mason, if the skills are there and the instincts are there, as they definitely are with Neely, I think that he'll definitely get a camp invite. He'll get someone giving him a chance to be able to prove himself.
And as always, college football fans are going to watch the draft and think, where's this guy and where's that guy and where's this guy? And this guy was a star and this guy was awesome, versus seeing a bunch of guys drafted and thinking, who are they? because that's what it comes down to. It's a projection to the NFL and how it the measurables, not necessarily yards and receptions and all those things, but height and weight and speed and jumping ability and all that business translates and fit to the game and how it's played at the NFL. So we appreciate the breakdown because we know most of these guys, but you throw some guys in there that we're not so familiar with because, again, they weren't necessarily serious impact players at the collegiate level. So we got Joey Weaver of From the Rumble Seat on the SB Nation platform for Georgia Tech Athletics. Joey, always appreciate the time.
Always a pleasure, Mark. Thank you.